Hello everyone, this is Shannon Flummerfelt from Flipped Schools. This is your Understanding Improvement series. This particular video is designed for building administrators to help you to understand how to examine instruction from a process point of view. This is important because as you enter into a flipped school culture, you will find that there will be lots and lots of discussion and focus around what needs to be changed and improved in traditional instructional practices. And so we can begin to look at these practices as processes, and then this helps you to understand more succinctly where points of improvement need to be made. I'll share a couple of examples with you here in just a moment. First of all, let's begin with a definition of processes. The Business Dictionary defines processes as a sequence or a series of related, in some cases interrelated, procedures, protocols that you might use. And when you instigate these procedures, you're using resources of some kind in your building. You're using time, you're using instructional materials, you've got all the instructional support resources that are used. And the reason that you allow resources to be allocated to these steps is because you're trying to convert a particular input and put it into a process which then creates an output. In order to do this, you do use resources, and you do that because you want to obtain goals. So in your buildings, as you look at your resources, and they are scarce resources, it's really helpful to be able to understand from a process point of view, what do some of these activities that we engage in instructionally, what do they look like, and how could I perhaps allocate resources in a better way to get the outcomes that I need? So for instance, today we're going to look at two different processes, and this is related to an instructional support activity, which is teacher evaluation. Many of you are probably in the midst of teacher evaluation processes that are being changed and rethought, in some cases mandated and legislated from your state or regional areas. So we need to be able to understand what actually are we talking about when we begin to look at teacher evaluation, think about how to change it. Hopefully the changes will drive improvements and not cause more confusion and redundancy. So when you use process-based approaches, it helps you to have these kinds of discussions. All right, so let's begin with our first example. This is a traditional teacher evaluation process. As mentioned in the definition of processes, we have three components: an input, a process, and then an output. Again, you're making decisions about how you're allocating resources, whether they're human capital resources, social capital resources, or financial resources, to have these processes create an output that adds to your goals. So in traditional teacher evaluation, let's take a look at this process as it might occur over a school year. We have inputs. We have a process and we have outputs, and you'll notice there's a green, blue, and rose-colored box to show you the differences between these three components of a process. First of all, the input. Let's say that you as a building administrator look at your list of teachers, and you see that you have some teachers that actually are required to be evaluated this year, either per your personnel policies in your district or perhaps state requirements, some of the AYP requirements that you might be looking at to understand if you have highly qualified teachers or not, for instance. So you start with informing the teacher, look, this is your year that I'm going to be doing an observation of you. And many building administrators in this case will ask the teacher, can you share with me, send me a short list of some of your professional goals, 2 or 3 professional goals that you're trying to work on this year. So that's all a part of the actual input. When you actually conduct the teacher evaluation, there are lots of different ways this process can look. we talk about traditional teacher evaluation, it may look something like this. You'll go in and you'll observe the classroom. You'll take a look at what's happening and you'll script that observation. You will complete a performance evaluation rubric, perhaps something that is a rubric that's been standardized in your district or that you've standardized as a building administrator. And then after you've done that, you'll have the teacher come in and you will debrief the evaluation with the teacher. Now, in traditional teacher evaluation, the thinking has been rather limited in that the output has tended to be you just want to get this done and have the teacher agree or disagree with the evaluation and either sign off on it or follow whatever kinds of procedures are available to have the evaluation reviewed. So the output tends to be you got the evaluation done, and now you can go on to the next task or what you're going to do next year with evaluation. We know that the process of teacher evaluation can be very different than this, however, and there has been a lot of excellent work that has been done by many of our thought leaders in the field. Charlotte Danielson, Robert Marzano, and many others have provided us with a lot of thought leadership on how this could be different. This particular instructional rounds process is one that comes out of Harvard University and has been fostered by Richard Elmore and others. But basically, let's say that we're trying to use an instructional rounds process and really shift the idea of teacher evaluation from just having the form signed to actually having a very, very different type of output. So let's look at this process, how it might occur. Now, while instructional rounds are not geared for focusing on individual teachers and their instructional practice per se, instructional rounds certainly give all teachers in a building who are participating in this process a chance to reflect on and improve their practice. So these aren't exactly parallel processes, but they are good examples of how you can use process-based thinking to contrast what's happening and how you're allocating resources in your building to drive instructional improvement. So as we look at the inputs here, we see that what happens here is a little bit different, quite a bit different actually, than the traditional teacher observation process. And that is that the school or a department in the school, for instance, or a school improvement team or an administrative team, they'll start some kind of collaborative examination of data, trying to take a look at where teaching practice might be weak. And hopefully those data sets are not just your standardized student achievement tests, but that they are multifaceted and what we would call triangulated data sets. But nonetheless, some type of data is used. And what would happen next is either the school would have their own, or the school system, the school district, would have their own observational team, or they would request an observational team to come and visit a set of classrooms to examine what's happening, knowing that there's some kind of a weakness. Again, this is collaborative, it's not punitive. The actual process is that an observation team would come in and visit a classroom or classrooms, and obviously the more classrooms that you visit, there's not going to be lots and lots, but there has to be a reasonable number so that the team would begin to be able to identify what's called a problem of teaching practice. And that's done in order for that to get given back to the school and for the school then to select a theory of action that will solve the problem of practice that exists. So again, this process itself is very much an improvement process rather than just an observational process. So that means the output is going to be very different. In this case, over a school year, what happens is that the output is that the school begins to make instructional improvements, and individual teachers or teams of teachers or departments of teachers will begin to make those instructional adjustments as needed. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed these two examples of how process-based thinking can help you to lay out some of the activities that you engage in as a building administrator, and to be able to help you to set up some very easy visual diagramming to make this more clear to you and to your constituents as to what you're trying to accomplish and how you're allocating resources to do that. If anyone's interested in more information on flipping schools, you can go to the Flip Institute website at flippedinstitute.com. And certainly if you are engaged in flipping your school, you're going to have lots and lots of questions that are going to emerge about where to drive improvement. So if you can use some process-based thinking to do that, I hope that that will help you along your improvement journey. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for listening.